Hello and welcome back. I am Anakiria and today we are going to be discussing more Chapaa lore and theories. My last Chapaa documentary video was before the game even released, so now there's tons more information to go through for these adorable creatures. I feel a little bit like Eloisa sometimes, coming up with random theories and ideas, but with Chapas instead of cryptids. I might consider doing a cryptids video sometime, but for now, let's get on with the video. Today's video is a continuation of the Chapaa documentary, discussing even more theories about the Chapas that we've come to know and love. If you haven't seen my first video, the link is in the description below. So let's get started. First off, let's take a look at Chapas in the wild. In Palia, Chapas are fairly easy to find creature. Just walk around some of the grassy fields and you'll spot some really quickly. Their reddish-brown fur makes them stand out easily against the green grass. In the wild, you can find as few as one Chapa or as many as up to 6 or 7 or even more in a given area. One of the places where I found a large group of Chapas together is just behind the Deya family farm, which is to the northwestern side of the Kilima village map. In Palia, Chapas run on all fours, but they stand up on their hind legs. While standing, they take a look around the area around them. This seems to be some sort of surveillance instinct, maybe similar to how meerkats and other small animals stand up and take a look around for danger. It's possible that, when traveling in groups, the Chapa who's on guard duty will take a look around, and if they spot any danger, they will let out a call to warn the others, or maybe they'll use their tails to signal other Chapas nearby. In my last video, I mentioned that I thought Chapas had family groups. Maybe the groups of Chapas that we see in the wild are members of the same family, out foraging for food together and looking out for each other. Another thing about Chapas is that they actually do burrow. In my last video, that was one of my theories, that Chapas are burrowing animals, and this has been confirmed. When talking to Hassian, he confirms that Chapas make their burrows in the roots of old trees. And in Bahari Bay, you can find what looks like small dens covered in twigs and branches, and these could possibly be the dens of a Chapa. So this is actually confirmed in the game, but Chapas are an invasive species. Let's take a look at what we know so far. When talking to Hassian, the local hunter of Kilima village, he mentions that Chapas are not natural to the environment and that they can overpopulate and destroy the natural wildlife and vegetation. But why is it that Chapas specifically are unnatural and everything else isn't? As you advance the friendship levels with the villagers and unlock more quests, you can find out more about the Chapas and how they came to Palia. Now, I haven't really reached that point yet, but other players have confirmed it in the Palia Discord forums. Chapas indeed aren't native to the area around Kilima and Bahari, and the person responsible for overturning the balance of the ecosystem by introducing Chapas is none other than Kenli, the mayor of Kilima village. While talking to Hassian, he mentions that Kenli brought Chapas here as pets for everyone, but they escaped and have overpopulated to the point of becoming pests instead. Kenli also confirms that it has been exactly 20 years since he brought Chapas to Kilima village. Special thanks to Whisper for letting me use your screenshots. Now, we know the who and the why, but what I'm interested in is the where. Where did Chapas originally come from? Maybe they originally came from a distant land where the biome is completely different? I've mentioned in my previous videos and also earlier that the reddish fur of the Chapa really stands out. And since Chapas seem to be prey animals, having bright fur doesn't really help with camouflage. Maybe that's because of the biome. Maybe Chapas were originally intended to be able to camouflage in a different environment, and the reddish fur is supposed to help them camouflage better with where they're originally from. For example, areas that are more rocky or more desert-like and have reddish sand. These kinds of places are where real-life animals with reddish-brown fur can camouflage easily in. Now let's talk about the impact the Chapas have on the ecosystem. Due to their small size and mannerism, it's easy to assume that Chapas are originally prey animals. But in Kilima and Bahari, Chapas aren't native. Because they aren't native, they don't fall in the natural order of predator and prey, and therefore they don't really have any natural predators in Kilima and Bahari. Due to this, the Chapas are overpopulating, as Hassian has mentioned. Now this reminds me of a real-life situation called the Australia rabbit problem. It's basically the same situation. Someone brought rabbits into Australia for recreational purposes, but they escaped, they overpopulated, and now they're an ecological threat to Australia. And just like the real-world example, the overpopulation of Chapas presents a real danger to the natural flora and fauna of Palia. The native species actually risk serious threat and even face extinction if this goes on for too long. Now you see why Hasyan dislikes Chapas so much. Currently, if we could have any kind of creature that would act as a predator to the Chapas, it would be the plume hound, which is Tau species, or the recently introduced palcat. Now we've talked about Chapas in the wild and the history of the Chapas. Now let's talk a bit more about the different kinds of Chapas there are in Palia. If you look in the achievements tab in the game, it states there are 3 types of Chapas and 3 types of Scharnowski. The first is the usual type of Chapa that we see everywhere. It has reddish-brown fur and is densely populated across both Kilima and Bahari Bay. This common Chapa is really easy to hunt. One makeshift arrow is enough. The hunting provides Chapa fur, a spotted Chapa tail, and Chapa meat. The next type of Chapa has darker fur. I found them a lot in Bahari Bay and they are a lot tougher to hunt. You need higher tier arrows to hunt them. The in-game classification for these is Elder Chapa, which implies that they are older than the common Chapa we see in age. The last one is the magical grey Chapa. This one is really rare and I've only ever seen this once while gathering pictures. Also, thank you to Corgi for giving me some screenshots for this one as well. These are so hard to find. The grey Chapa is the magical variant of the 3 Chapa types. You can clearly see the differences between this and the other 2 types of Chapas. This one has grey fur with blue stripes, and its tail seems almost split. Supposedly, if you try to hunt this, it multiplies and you have to try hitting the real one with a dispel arrow. The magical variant of Chapa makes me wonder about the magic of Palia, or flow as it's called. I wonder if the Chapas were born this way or if they mutated through age or through some other factor. It's also possible that as the elder Chapas age even more, they absorb the flow around them and evolve into the grey Chapas, gaining magical abilities. However, as I don't have any evidence for this, you can just assume it as a theory for now. Earlier in the video, I talked about how Chapas are non-native and how I compared them to the Australia rabbit problem. Now, this comparison to Australia and the parallel it has with Chapas made me think of another theory regarding the Chapas. Now, Australia is famous for a few of its unique animals, namely kangaroos, koalas, and so on. Now, what these animals have in common is that they are marsupials. If you don't know what that is, a marsupial is an animal that has a pouch on its belly, and it's where the young are raised in for the early months of their life. Examples include, as I mentioned earlier, the kangaroo and the koala, as well as animals such as wombats, opossums, and sugar gliders. Now, you guys can probably guess my theory. I'm wondering if Chapas could potentially be a marsupial. If you look closely at a Chapa, you'll notice that their belly is very, very round. Now, this could be explained by other things such as a lot of fur, a lot of body fat, or that they just overfeed a lot. But let's take a look at this through a different lens. Having thick fur or body fat would make sense if Chapas lived in a cold biome, but Palia doesn't really seem that cold at all, especially around Kilima and Bahari. As for the idea that Chapas are overfeeding and thus that's why they're so fat and round, that would also be unlikely because I highly doubt that many of the citizens of Palia would willingly leave food out for Chapas, especially considering that they are an invasive species and something that, aside from Kenli, very few of the citizens seem to want to have around. On the other hand, if you think of it as Chapas are marsupials, a round belly would indicate that Chapas have a pouch. And it is inside of this pouch that the Chapas babies are kept. Once again, for the sake of differentiating, I will be calling the babies Chu. So we never really see a baby Chu anywhere in Palia. It's not shown to actually exist. Now, this might just be that they never really coded one for the game, but that's not really as fun of a theory as assuming that because the Chapas are marsupials, They just have them in their pouch all the time, and by the time the Chapaa babies or the chuus, and only when they are big enough to be able to fend for themselves, that's when they are let out, and that's when they resemble the adult common Chapas a lot. So at first glance, it's hard to tell the difference between a recently grown Chapaa and one who is an adult Chapaa. Now, if this theory holds true, then by the classification of marsupials, a baby would be called a joey, but again, I still prefer chew. And that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this Chapaa documentary and theory video. I had a lot of fun tracking and photographing and taking videos of Chapas in Palia. And if I have more information or theories later, I'll make more videos of them. I might also consider making videos on sernuncs and some of the other animals of Palia sometimes later. If you have any interesting theories of your own, feel free to mention it in the comments below, and please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all later. Bye!